Hey guys, welcome back to Dead End Street. Tonight I'm going to be taking a look at one of my all-time favorite bands. We're going to be ranking the albums of Suede. Um, Started out in the early 90s. Um, Had some great success to start with. Um, Broke up in the early 2000s, made a triumphant return back in 2013, and have been making new records steadily ever since. This is a band that's been part of my life now for over 30 years. And we'll get into a little bit more of that, of course, as we go on. We're going to only take a look at the 10 proper studio records. We will not be counting Sci Fi Lullabies Part 1 or Part 2, which are amazing records in their own right. They're basically the rarities and B-sides records. Um, some of the greatest B-sides of by any group of any time, and we'll touch on that later. So let's get started here. Number 10, to surprise to basically no one who is a big Suede fan, is 2002's A New Morning. So this was a record that was recorded after uh, singer Brett Anderson decided to become a good boy after a 90s hangover. He was on the up and up and was really outside of Suede world. Um, and maybe shouldn't have been writing for Suede songs at the time. It's my opinion. And I think it's pretty much their opinion also. Um, Funny thing is it came out at a time in my life when I had met my wife and I had become a good boy after my 90s hangover. Um, Started making wedding plans, having kids, you know, was doing the totally happy thing. It's just like they were. And I'm glad I didn't do any writing during that time period for myself because it might have sounded just like this. I don't really, I own it. I don't ever really listen to it. I've listened to it enough when it was out to become familiar with it. Um, there's a couple of good tracks on there, but it just doesn't um, hold the candle to the other Suede records. In fact, basically any of the other Suede records, for the exception of number 9, would beat the pulp out of it in a fight. So moving on. Number 9 is going to be 1999's Head Music. Um, I believe at one time Brett was quoted as calling it a half of a great record. I think that's a perfect description. I mean, just need to look at the tracks, the electricity. This is the really cool glam rock fun. I can't get enough is basically Mark Bolan through a Prince filter. Everything Will Flow is a great song. She's in Fashion could have been a Brian Ferry track. Um, for the exception of maybe one or two other ones, that's just about it for me. Kraken, Union Jack, Elephant Man. The title track is quite regrettable. Um, if you heard it, you would know what I'm talking about. Um, it's hard to kill the record because truly no one knew what to do musically in the late 90s. Basically, everybody was fumbling the ball. Um, and sadly, this might be a top 4 or 5 record from the year 1999. So rough times for music. So on to number 8, where um, every record from this point on is at least a 4-star record for me. I mean, these are great records for me of one of my all-time favorite bands. So when I say that this is number 8, um, I believe this is an excellent record. Um, so I'm going to go with 2016's Night Thoughts. It's crazy that a record this good is number 8, but um, so this record is more grandiose than the record before it, which was Bloodsports, um, and leans more on the Dogman Star ethos more so than Coming Up. Um, but for the 21st century, and with Richard's guitar, which is much more suitable for what uh, Brett is writing, and what Neil is writing, which we'll talk about at more length, much greater length later. Um, but this, I think, is where the songwriting trio of Anderson, Oakes, and Neil Codling really become a major force, even more so than I think in their 90s heyday. Because great, really, Coming Up was the only record that the three of them really were at full power of their, songwriting ability. So the fact that they were able to do this so many years later is amazing. The opener, When You Are Young, is mournful. It's as mournful as it is grand. And the monster track, Outsiders, is a modern rock classic. Intro riff is amazing, so good. No Tomorrow is a great 70s style rocker. Pale Snow is hauntingly gripping, with an excellent Brett vocal on that track. Um, I Don't Know How to Reach You is just epic. Um, and as with most Suede records, there's not a bad track on it. So, again, making this number 8 does not mean I do not absolutely love this record. Um, like Kids is another great rock track on the record, too. But yeah, Night Thoughts, number 8. Number 7 is going to be 2018's The Blue Hour. Another fantastic record. There's a theme that runs through my life and with my connection to Suede's music. That it runs parallel to everything that's happened in my life, and it's a connection I have with basically no other band, and I'll touch on that also. It just seems like wherever they are musically in their lives and in their history, is basically kind of where I am in mine. Um, and that's a journey of 3+ decades we're talking. So the Blue Hour finds Suede middle aged, some of them as parents trying to figure out what the fuck that means artistically. Um, it means life is still confusing. It means life is still conflicting. It's still strange. Um, which means we can still make great Suede music. It's just in a completely different way than it was in the mid 90s. It's more like, less like waking up, and not so much waking up in the morning and going, holy shit, how did I get here? Where am I? Whose house is this? And it's more like, holy shit, how did I, of all people, just become someone's parent? Uh, this world is sick. What does it mean for my kids? Uh, what does it mean for my legacy as a dad, as an artist? I mean, this is all kind of the things that are going through this record. It's a bleak record, but that's how Suede navigates. When you have that darkness in you as an artist, it's important that you have an outlet to use that so that it does not leak out into your personal life and your real world and your family's life. Um, it's a very, very delicate balance. And I think Suede really nails that on the Blue Hour. Um, it also can be seen it's can be seen as revisiting the narrator of Dogman Star in his 50s, which is a genius thought. It's big, ambitious, it's bloated, and it's awesome. As One is terrifying, and it's an appropriate beginning, desperate and dire. Life is Golden is a modern day Suede classic. The Invisibles is awesome. Fly Tipping really threads the themes of the record perfectly. It's just a fantastic record. If you're not familiar with Suede's more modern work, check it out. Even if you're not necessarily into their early work, this is a new band. I mean, it's the same guys, same songwriters, but it's just a brand new chapter. They're really hitting their stride here. So number 6 for me is going to be 2013's Blood Sports, which is the first of the reunion era records, or the rebirth era, or the reformation era, or whatever it is you want to call it. They're revitalized. They're ready to correct their legacy. Because let's face it, going out on Head Music or A New Morning would have been tragic. So it comes out 11 years after A New Morning, which is about how long it was that I personally took a break from writing and to focus on getting married and having little ones and focus on what the hell I was. Um, and it just seems as soon as things started to come together, Suede came back again. It's just interesting. I once read that Brett likened this record to the midpoint between Dogman Star and Coming Up. And I think it's a pretty good description. Um, all the pop accessibility and sensibility of Coming Up, um, with the moodiness and the melancholy of Dogman Star, um, the Dashmore post-punk involved, courtesy of Richard's gorgeous guitar playing. The record opens with The Vast Barriers and Snowblind. That leads into the awesome single that starts and ends with You, which is heartfelt, but it does it without being sappy and lame. Um, it also has a bit of Warm Jets era Eno in there for good measure, which great for me. I'm not going to argue with that. For the Strangers is a great anthem in the tradition of great Suede anthems. It has an intro riff that is kind of reminiscent to me of like mid 80s era Public Image. Hit Me, really good rock song. Sometimes I feel like Float Away is absolutely beautiful. All in all, it's just a triumphant return for Suede, um, and of clear superior quality to the two previous records. Okay, so we've reached the top 5. Um, so basically anything that happens here, I think is probably going to be somewhat controversial to the Suede world and the Suede community. So be kind. Um, Number 5 is going to be Coming Up for me. Coming Up is a fantastic record. Uh, for me, it's a 5-star record. So if you think about that, that means Suede has 5-star records. I have to go back and look to see if there's any other of my favorite groups that has that many basically almost perfect records to me. Um, I've always said that Coming Up is a lifestyle record, um, which very much fell in line with my lifestyle at the time. Lazy, dirty, full of drama and art, and unashamedly so. It was very much the opposite of his predecessor, Dogman Star. It was lean and mean, right to the point with no excess fat. It plays like a greatest hits record. It truly sounds like a greatest hits record, um, which I think was the point. They scored 5 top 10 singles on the UK singles charts. Um, Living here in the States, it was shocking. Um, Yet shocking and yet not shocking that the U.S. completely missed the boat on this record. Uh, So I mean, in 1996, in the U.S. it was really they were just still really hanging on this friggin' Seattle thing, uh, which I still to this day don't relate to. I mean, I was in my early 20s in the early 90s, so if I didn't get it then, I'm not going to get it now. It's the first record to feature Richard Oakes on guitar and Neil Codling on keys. Both became major contributors in the songwriting. The record opens up with Trash, which is kind of like the Dirtbag national anthem. Lazy is like a Bowie Lennon mashup, which was pure pop confectionery perfection. Um, she has a dark, dirty glam rock Mark Bolan strut that's just excellent. Beautiful Ones contains possibly the greatest opening guitar opening riff of the entire decade, along with some of the best rock song lyrics of the era. Saturday Night might be the second best opening riff of the 90s. Honestly, though, I mean, that guitar tone and the intro of Saturday Night is just to die for. Uh, I would willing to bet it's Richard playing a Jag through plugged clean into a Vox amp. It has to be. Beautiful. Brett's vocal melody and hook on that song are absolutely magic. It's a damn near perfect record and it holds a place near and dear to my heart. Um, to that dirtbag that I was in my early 20s and the mid 90s. So why is it number five? And the answer is simple. I mean, it's basically because I'm in a different place in my life. As wonderful it is to visit this record a few times a year and give it a few spins, and that particular time, it would be unhealthy to live there, um, especially in my 50s. Ooh, my lord. So, number four is going to be the brand new record, Antidepressants from 2025. Uh, that might be controversial, but that's okay, right? I absolutely love the direction that this group has gone at this point in their career. They just sound vital and confident, um, and even more confident than they were in their younger years, I believe. They're really leaning into their post punk influences here, um, which is really fantastic. Um, it starts off with the first single, Disintegrate, which just kicks the door down. I mean, what a great guitar riff. What a hook. The tracks Dancing with the Europeans and The Sound in the Summer, the next track, really give me kind of vintage Chameleons vibes. Um, the title track gives off heavy Killing Joke vibes with a dash of Public Image. Criminal Ways could easily be a sibling to the Cult's Big Neon Glitter. Uh, Sweet Kid is Suede at their power pop best when they're channeling their inner Blondie or Pretenders. Um, Somewhere between an atom and a star gives a little wink and a nod to early Suede's early days, a la Sleeping Pills. Trance State is a song that I really liked when it was released as a single previous to the album being released. But I absolutely love it within the context of the record. And that goes for all of the singles. The guitar tones on Trance State are just absolutely divine. Um, I love how the last two choruses are sung in a lower register. Uh, that's not what rock bands do. Rock bands usually go to the higher register on the last chorus. I just love how Suede just kind of flipped that on its head. Um, June Rain is stunning. Uh, the phrasing reminds me of This Woman's Work by Kate Bush, which just grabs hold of your heart and just, you know, squashes it. Um, Life is Endless, Life is a Moment is a very powerful closing track. The backing vocals in the chorus are just fantastic. The abrupt ending is a perfect way to end a near perfect record. Ed Bowler's production on these latest two records, longtime producer Ed Bowler, um, is just perfect. Um, it was just perfect for what these songs called for. The music is stark and naked, but surrounded in this dense atmosphere that really gives them a true vintage post punk vibe. Really, in like the spirit of like the Banshees, the Cure, the Bunnymen, and those old Joy Division records, but still absolutely and completely Suede. You can hear the influences here, but there's no doubt that this is a Suede record, and that is the beauty of it. So, number four, antidepressants. Number three is going to be, I'm going to get in trouble for this. Number three is going to be the debut, Suede, from 1993. Five-star record. Um, this record was a massive deal for me in 1993. Um, I had just started to discover all of the post-punk British bands from the 80s. I was about 19. And I really was not digging what was going on musically in the States. So I had nothing to cling to that was mine. So yes, was I discovering the Cure and the Bunnymen and the Banshees and the Smiths and Joy Division and the Chameleons and Gang of Four, Public Image. I was discovering this whole new world of music. In 1993, most of those bands were either different versions from the classic era, no longer around, or it's just not in their prime anymore. So I was latching onto something that was almost kind of gone. So there was nothing current. I mean, if you think about it, McCulloch had left the Bunnymen. The Smiths were long gone. The Cure were still in their classic era. The Banshees were winding down. The Chameleons were no longer. Gang of Four was no longer. Um, so I was really clamoring for something that was mine. Um, and enter Suede. I was in the States, which I think was the same for you guys in Europe and the UK, maybe even Australia. MTV had what was called 120 minutes. It was a Sunday night show, I think midnight, right? That showcased alternative music. And one night I was watching and I saw the video for Drowners, which was the US version, which was the stage and the giant crowd and the suds and I was totally enthralled. It was like Mick Ronson playing with the Smiths and through this 90s filter. It blew my mind. It was just awesome. Um, it was everything I was looking for as a dyed black haired 19-year-old. I finally have found my band. Um, this wasn't like a band that my dad got me into or my uncle got me into. This was my band, happening in real time. Um, Brett was this. effeminate yet confrontational front man with this voice that was part Bowie, part Morrissey, part Lydon. Um, Bernard Butler's guitar playing was totally transcended any other guitarist that was going on at the time. I mean, what was going on here in the States was just a retread of everything that happened in the 70s. They had, rebelled against the 80s shredding thing, and now they're going back to being Tony Iommi and Jimmy Page again, which we did already. This was exciting. Bernard was so fluid and emotive. It was like Ronson meets Marr meets Hendrix. Um, the level of songwriting on a song like So Young was so absurd for a bunch of young men in their early 20s. The layers of electric guitars, the acoustic guitars, piano, the soaring vocal delivery, the lyrics from a horribly dark world that I wanted so badly to be a part of. The aforementioned Drowners, uh, Sleeping Pills is divine, um, as is this record's centerpiece, Pantomime Horse, which spoke to me in a way that nothing else did at that time. The Next Life is gorgeous, topped only by the Love and Poison version. Love and Poison was the concert film from the same era that was also released as a uh, vinyl record not too long ago. Um, Also true with Moving. The live version is superior to the studio version, in my opinion. Animal Nitrate was so dark and dank with a killer swagger and attitude that was absent from everything else that was going on musically here in America. The first 3 seconds of that amazing riff just sends me back into a time in my life like a time machine. I was living in a 3-story house in Center City, Philadelphia, that was falling apart with my fellow bandmates. When I hear that riff, I can almost smell the cigarette smoke and the cut price perfume oils. Even though I quit smoking a quarter century ago and haven't used perfume oils since. I hear Metal Mickey differently these days. I always thought it was inspired by Mark Bolan, but I've now come to realize it was Neil Young. Um, I wouldn't have known that then because Neil Young was nowhere to be found on my radar until my 30s. Uh, Man, maybe even 40. Um, Another major difference between Bernard and Richard. Richard's playing is far more angular and post-punk leaning than Bernard's, but I digress. There's also the lyrics on this record. These lyrics are not the kind of lyrics that Brett would be using now. I mean, stuff like, "Oh, Dad, she's driving me mad," or "You're a water sign, I'm an air sign." That's not. It's just something only a young man would write. Um, a very passionate young man. Uh, a nice little slice of nostalgia, which is why it's at number 4. As much as it meant to me, as much as it spoke to me then. I'm a little bit older now, and though I hold those times very dear, and it's sometimes nice to visit a few times a year for 44 minutes. The record comes from a very turbulent time, very exciting time, but turbulent nonetheless. Um, Nice place to visit. Don't want to live there. And I also still adamantly believe that Breakdown and Animal Lover should have been replaced with My Insatiable One and To the Birds. I'd be shocked if the band did not agree with that sentiment. Two of the greatest B-sides of all time probably shouldn't have been B-sides, should have been album tracks. But the Suede debut, self-titled 1993. Number two, I'm almost afraid to do this because I'm going to get killed. It's okay. It's all relative, right? I love all of these records. Everything from Coming Up on down here is a five-star record, very important to my life, and I love. So number two is going to be Dogman Star. Dogman Star is the second Suede record. It's a sprawling, brooding journey. It was not a commercial success, um, which at the time I found shocking. But there's no way the mainstream was going to relate to a record like this. It just wasn't going to happen. The mainstream never does. Brett and Bernard set themselves apart from the other groups coming out of the UK at the time with this record, while the others were going more pop. They went further into the darkness. This record also spoke to me very much so when I was 20 years old. There was nothing like this record at the time. Same as the debut. Uh, and my life, as I said, was running parallel to Suede's records. It was kind of uncanny. Anyway, um, We Are the Pigs paints a very dank picture. Helps start the proceedings along with um, introducing the band. Heroin is one of my top five Suede songs of all time. Uh, Incredible lyrically, incredible musically. Um, it just paints this picture that is so disturbing and romantic at the same time. Um, it's magical. Wild Ones is not only my favorite Suede song, but it's one of my favorite songs of all time by anyone. Um, the slow build, the early riff by Bernard, the perfect vocal by Brett, the coda. Um, I don't know what else to say about it other than it's a song that kind of I connect with on a very, very deep level. Um, the Power is such a great Ziggy Stardust song that it's actually better than a couple of the songs on the Ziggy record itself. Bowie is my favorite artist of all time. So for me to say that and coming from me is saying something. The Two of Us is absolutely brilliant. Asphalt World is Bernard's baby. Loads and loads and loads and loads of layers of guitars. It goes on, I think it was 9 minutes. I forget what the exact time is, but it's long, but it doesn't, there's no wasted moments in it. Still Life is a totally majestic closer, complete with full orchestra, full on bellowing vocal by Brett. Um, I get goosebumps every time I hear it, even all these years later. All these years later. Um, my main reasoning for this being number one and not number two, for all the reasons I stated for the debut being where it's at. Um, just in a different place. And I still love this band and I love where they're going. And It's as simple as that. I also like to add that Hollywood Life and Black and Blue, or Black or Blue, are inferior to some of the B sides. Yet again, um, especially Killing of a Flash Boy and Whipsnade, Benchwood Boy. It's just there's so many great B sides from this record that could have really fit on the record better than those two tracks. Um, I think I think I remember hearing the guys also believe that also. So absolutely incredible record. It was a brave record to do at the time. Um, it was a huge uh, middle finger to the mainstream at the time, and still totally respect that. And it's also Bernard's swan song with the band. Um, just the absolutely landmark record for me for that decade. Okay, so some of you may find this to be sacrilege for the hardcore Suede fan, but I'm very sorry. It's just how I feel. Um, this record and the new one just kind of really encompass where I am um, in my life. It's like the perfect soundtrack. I connect with it on a very deep level, just as much as I did the early records when they came out. I don't believe that. Um, I don't believe that a artist has to live in the past, and I don't. And Suede is not doing that, which is why I have such immense respect for them, why I connect on such a deep level with their music. Um, it just feels like they were kind of at the same spot where I am, and I'm a little bit younger than the guy. Actually, no, I think I'm the same age as Richard. I think he's actually maybe a month or two younger than me. I'm not positive, but it seems they kind of figured out the whole middle age thing, which is, you know, maybe we were way overthinking this on Blue Hour and Night Thoughts. Um, the kids are older. We don't need to be up their ass every minute of the day. So what does that mean for me now? I'm not the reckless young man I was. I'm not the hovering parent that I was. Where are we going now? What are we going to do? And Suede says, I know. Let's go back into the darkness. And this time, they're older and wiser. Um, can't hurt themselves. They can't hurt anyone else. Um, it's just they obviously relate to this mood, and I do too. And I think to pull this off at this point in their career is nothing short of amazing, really. Um, usually, at this point, bands start either mellowing out and become like the boring old farts and doing acoustic this and orchestra that all the time, which is fine sometimes, but or they start trying to copy the records they did in their past, and it doesn't ever really. Sometimes it works, but you're never going to top yourself. You can't top yourself. This is a great post-punk record. Not just a great modern post-punk record, it's a great post-punk record, period. It measures up to those records. Um, Now this is where I'd like to finally settle the whole nonsensical guitarist debate that's been going on now for 32 years. Bernard Butler is an insanely talented guitarist and songwriter. He set the ball rolling. He set the bar high. He's had a fantastic career on in his own right. No one else could have done for Suede what he did at that moment in time. But he's been gone for over 3 decades. 3 decades. And I still see debates about this. Richard Oakes is the guitarist for Suede and has been growing along with Suede and with us for 3 decades. His guitar playing shares a bit with Bernard in as much as the whole glam rock tendencies that they both hold. But that's pretty much where the um, similarities end. Um, where they differ is that Bernard's playing was more of a classic rock flow to it. It was it had some attitude, but it was still very much of a flow, and it was beautiful. Richard has much more angular post-punk vibe to his playing, which matches perfectly with what Brett and Neil are writing now. Um, I think this is not only Suede's crowning achievement, but it's definitely Richard's crowning achievement. The guitar playing on this record is phenomenal. He channels his inner John McGeoch, his inner Geordie, his inner Will Sargent, his inner Keith Levine, and he concocts a guitar sound so familiar but totally unique. It's fucking perfect. Um, for me, this is not only the my favorite Suede record, um, but for me, it's the best record of the century so far. We're 2025, so this is the best record in 25 years to me, maybe longer. Um, you feel I know this may sound crazy to some people, but it's just how I feel. Okay. She Still Leads Me On, the lead off track of the album, is very heartfelt. Ode to Brett's mom. It's heartfelt, but it drives like a closer era Joy Division track. Personality Disorder shows Brett's new penchant for spoken verses, which he seems to have discovered the last two records. Um, Kind of reminds me of something that John Lydon would do with Public Image. Um, I really connect with The Only Way I Can Love You on an emotional level. Um, but it's musically so haunting, and the music just matches the lyrics so perfectly. Drive Myself Home is gorgeous. The monster bass line by the totally underappreciated Matt Osman on Black Ice is imposing and gripping. It has a great hook. Um, it's just the beautiful nocturnal rock song. Um, Ed Buller gives Shadow Self a little bit of a Martin Hannett kick, the great producer. Um, just another killer track. Then comes my favorite track on the record. It's Always the Quiet Ones. What an epic intro, an epic hook, um, epic keys by Neil Codling, epic guitar tone in that chorus. My goodness, gives me goosebumps. So good. Ah, the record closes with Turn Off Your Brain and Yell, which would make an excellent show closer or opener. In fact, they opened with it when I got to see them a couple years back. Um, please come back, boys, please. Um, this is a perfect record made by a band 3 decades in, with no signs of letting up. I really cannot wait to hear what they do next. After Antidepressants, which is currently number 4. Who knows where it's going to be a year from now. I've always loved Suede's music. Um, we're getting to the point where they're getting close to my Mount Rushmore. Um, I don't know, but that's a subject for another video, I think. So that's it. That's my Suede album ranking. I'd love to hear yours. Please, if you want to, I love reading the comments. Please put your Suede album rankings in the comments. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. We have plenty of other album rankings we've done on the channel. We've been here for quite a few years now. We do top 25 of each year. We've gone from 1979 all the way up to 1990. 1991 is coming up soon. The next couple of weeks, we'll be doing the Chameleons, who also have a new record out, and Susie and the Banshees, my all-time favorite group. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time on Dead End Street. See ya.